What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Facts on the Ground. I'm Misty Winston, joined by my co-host, Jesse Zerowell. Today, we have host of Frank Analysis on the show, fellow MCSC network show, who has just done an amazing job this past week. I like to call it the slumber party protest. So he was down there covering that and caused a ruckus, which I'm so proud of him for doing. He did an amazing job. So Franco, thanks for coming back to the show, man.
Thank you for bringing me back on. It's been a while since I've been on Facts on the Ground.
Yeah, it has been a little while. Yeah, for sure. So, okay. Where do you want to start, man? Because there's been a lot of shit that's happened in the past 24 hours. Well, first of all, when this whole thing first started, what was your gut reaction to Cori Bush, doing whatever this thing that she did on Friday?
I always knew it was just theatrics. I always knew her mama bear is not going to let them do anything that's actually going to be revolutionary.
It sounds like, Franco, it sounds like your audio is coming from your computer, maybe. And does it sound weird to you, Jesse?
Yeah, there's a little echo.
Yeah.
Let me see.
There's better. Say something now.
All right, testing. How do
I sound? That sounds much better.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this thing is loose.
That's all right.
Yeah, I gotta get it better.
I just want to make sure everybody could hear you.
But yeah, like I was saying, I always assume they're performing theatrics because that's what they've done for a long time. Like AOC was allowed to protest outside of Nancy Pelosi's office with her permission. They're never ever going to do anything that's actually revolutionary. They're only going to do things that their party lets them do so that they can secure their position in Congress. So they're never going to be challenging their colleagues. And that's one of the questions that I kept asking them. What are you going to do to challenge your corporate colleagues that are voting for all these bills that give money to apartheid states like Israel and for more war to Saudi Arabia so that they can continue the genocide in Yemen, to bombs, putting in money to drone strike Syria. This is the money that's being spent with our taxpayer dollars instead of it being spent to forgive people's rents that they couldn't pay during this economic crisis. So I knew it was going to be performative arts. So I went there on the ground on Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday. On Saturday, it was just, I got there at midnight. There were more people there than the other two nights that I went. And there was still, like the other nights, it was a bunch of college students and staffers. And Cori Bush and AOC were protected. That very first night is when I was filming AOC and her photo op. There was a huge line of people that wanted to take pictures with her. And at the time, there were people telling me, yo, Franco, why didn't you just start screaming at her then? Well, I mean, this is my first time being in front of a congressperson, and I thought I would have been able to interview her and just had exposed her in a calm way, ask her simple questions and then catch her right there in her lies and in her logic. But she was just running away from me when I started asking her questions. So I was like, all right, next time I'm not gonna let them get away like that. And so I went there again on Sunday, the next day. Cori Bush was protected by her bodyguards, and then she hid in her car the rest of the night. And then on Tuesday, they were giving their grandstanding speeches. And I just got so aggravated when AOC started speaking and she was gaslighting people and just implying we will keep doing this, but she's referring to everybody else, not herself and what they will do. What are these legislators going to do? And so I started calling her out on that. I was like, what about all these people? She was trying to call me out because she kept looking at me with her eye because she remembered that I asked her questions before. She's what's going to be our 10-step plan? Kind of mocking me. And then I was like, are people's rents going to be forgiven? And then she ignored me the first time. And then I said it again louder. Are people's rents going to be forgiven? And then she was like, we'll figure that out later. It's something important, right?
That's the same response she had when Max Blumenthal asked her about Venezuela. She said, we're preparing a comment. Yeah. And a comment never came. Maybe a tweet or two.
No, if the comment came, it was, I defer to caucus leadership.
Right.
That was the comment. And it took her like a month and a half to come out with that. But this is what drives me crazy, is that people should want to know the answer to the question that you asked her.
It should be easy.
Yes. And the fact that they waited until the last minute and then they put on this like show, this performance of this whatever slumber party or whatever the fuck it was, that was obviously like a setup. Like there were no Capitol Police. We've been to protests, Franco. There's cops fucking everywhere. Like that wasn't a protest. That was
the police were protecting them.
Yes. I mean, come on. And it was just so obviously like a show. It was a performance. And then for you to ask legitimate questions, because all this extension does is kick the can down the road. And it's like it's not even the same. Like before, when we got the eviction moratorium, it was for everybody. Now it's only going to cover like 90% of the people. And people will be like, oh, but it's 90%. Well, what about the other 10%? And it's also like this means tested bullshit. And it's based on the COVID numbers. So what happens if your COVID numbers go down? Then do you lose that aid? And what does that mean for people? Because they're still going to be 2 months further behind on rent and nobody has the fucking money. So what happens then? Why is that not a question that everybody wants to know the answer to?
It's not like a victory where you're like crying because like, oh, that's it. Like they were acting like, oh, like job well done. When no, and then they're like, and we're not finished, but she's like referring to those people, like to the people who are sitting in. But these people that were sitting there are so bought into this narrative that they set, this brainwashing to trust in these politicians. And then like one of the people there, like this girl was saying that also went after Max Blumenthal in another video. She's like, we need to help them. And I wish I could have told her, no, they need to help us. Right. Like they're supposed to be working for us. It's not the other way around. Yeah, but that's what happens when people hero worship.
No, we don't owe them anything.
Right. This goes back to the cult of personality point, which we've talked about many times. And when Bernie Sanders was running, it was a point I made repeatedly and people would put it down. There's no cult of personality, whether it's surrounding Sanders or AOC or the squad in total. And there absolutely is. But people, like you said, Franco, have bought into it and they're going to see what they want to see and believe what they want to believe. And this, whether they realize it or not, is just navel gazing of the highest order. And like you said, we've seen it before. We saw it with AOC and the stunt in Pelosi's office. And what did that yield? Nothing. What has this yielded? Really nothing.
Yeah. What have they effectively done to improve our lives, right? We've gotten crumbs and then they celebrate the crumbs. And that's what this is. It's like, this is crumbs.
It's not even crumbs. It's like the crumbs of crumbs. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. It's offensive to me. And what I was just talking, I'm coming off a bitch, so I'm wound up. But it pisses me off because like the American people are just like willing to accept that this is it. This is the best that we get. Are you fucking kidding me? These are the progressive members of Congress. And when they like pretend to put on like a fight, it's like for the bare minimum. They didn't even go in. Like they should have been going in. Okay, we're asking for rent cancellation. We're asking for mortgage cancellation. Like they should have gone in there asking for a boatload of stuff. Instead, they're like, can we please have a extension on the eviction moratorium? Oh, you're going to, break it down so that it's means tested. Okay, please. We'll cheer for that too. No, it's
almost like it was planned. Like Congress and Biden were probably going to do it anyway. But for the progressives now, because there's a lot of people now that see through Biden because they still, that group of people still vote for him. They kind of see through him. But they have these progressive politicians now to calm those people down and to give them a false sense of like how that there's people in Congress that are fighting with them that are activists. That was some poor organization if they're activists. Like there was more people for the March for Medicare for All, like in New York City and in LA and in all the other cities. The 50 cities.
Ours was pretty small, and I'm pretty sure that we had more people than they did at certain points. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it, but what bothers me the most is that why wait until last minute? Have they answered that for anybody? Because everybody wants to know.
I asked that, and then their defenders, like their fans, were like, they've been tweeting about it.
Oh my god!
Tweeting about it is not the same thing as organizing an event. They're just complaining, and they're like those like Medicare for All period, and then they like tweet that out, and it gets like over 1,000 retweets. That's not the same thing. That's just, you're stating the obvious shit that we need.
Well, these are hashtag activists. That's what I call them, because it's a hashtag. Like they're in like, oh, well, I tweeted about it, so that means that I'm fighting for it. No, that's not what that means. And I'm like, really? They tweeted about it? That's what you're willing to accept? These people have actual power. Like they have actual power. Like some guy got mad at me and he's like, oh, well, what did you do? What did you do? And I noticed that they were yelling that at you too.
Yeah, they kept asking me that.
Doing?
Yeah,
I have no fucking power. Franco has no fucking power.
as if like there's some working class people out there that have the time to be organizing like that when they work a 9-to-5 job or have to work 2 jobs, or there's some people that work 3 jobs, or there's some people that are homeless. Like, how can they organize efficiently if they don't have internet access?
Yeah,
right? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Implicit in that is the command to shut up and stop whining. Just accept, like you said, the crumbs that are thrown to you. And that happens even if you do have a comprehensive picture of what an alternative system could look like or an alternative solution could look like. And it comes from a lot of the same people, if not all of the same people, who are hero worshiping these, I don't even know if you can call them politicians. They're more like PR figures at this point. And this, to me, just smacks of a PR stunt. I don't know what else you could call it.
Oh my God. And then the PR people like that walk with them and protect them and like answer questions, like get in front of them and they're like, she can't answer that. She can't. Like they receive instructions for people that are higher up, and then they tell them like, all right, this is what you can say and don't say this. So then they have like their eyes out like hawks. And if there's people like Max Blumenthal or myself that ask those questions that they're not supposed to answer, that are going to make Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and other people in their party look bad, they immediately intercept.
Yes. And it was like beautiful too. And I'm glad that Max did what he did, because when they jumped in front of Cori Bush and like, oh, she can't, that's what they always do. And that should like make everybody furious. They are elected officials. They work for us. And I understand that like they can't take questions all the time and they have to be, interviews and all of that stuff. Like if they were just like answering every question from every Joe Schmo on the street, that's all they would ever do. Right. But when you have a journalist in front of you at an event in public, you should be willing to answer questions. You work for us. We should be able to ask the questions that we want. That's the job of the media, is to hold politicians accountable, to ask them the tough questions. That's what it's supposed to look like. What you and what Max did, that's what journalism is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be adversarial. It's supposed to hold people in power accountable and, make sure that everybody is able to witness their answers on these issues, that it's life and death issues. And so the fact that they have to be saved by like Cori Bush coming out and like, well, let's play some music. That's so offensive. We're talking about people's lives and you're brushing it off. AOC says, we'll deal with that later. And Cori Bush wants to play music rather than answer the tough questions. That's gross. Like, what is that? The
more I think about it, the more I think about how ridiculous that situation is. Like I'm the one that's standing up for these homeless people and these people that are going to be owing rent. Like I'm asking that important question and they're just brushing that all off. And then the people there, their fans are defending these politicians rather than backing up and being like, yeah, like we deserve an answer for that. Like, what about those homeless people? Like then it's revealing that it's not about the issues then to these people that are sheltered and have their parents pay for their college. It's about the personalities. It goes over their head.
And if it does come to issues, it comes as a single issue, as in the eviction moratorium. There's no looking beyond that as to why is there an eviction moratorium? Why is that due to COVID? Why was the response in the US to COVID so horrendous? Well, military spending is one reason. And then there are a host of others we could get into or talk about, but the totality isn't looked at. It's the one issue that's looked at and focused on, and it's manipulated and distorted by people like AOC, by people like Cori Bush and their handlers, so that their fans especially don't even know how to look beyond it. And I'm not saying these people are stupid or ignorant or saying that
propagandized.
I'm better than them in any way, but that's a fact that there's no looking beyond a single issue, whether it's
so
eviction
important.
moratoriums or something else.
Yes.
Yeah, and then as to the reporting, as you were saying, Misty, it should be adversarial, absolutely. And Franco, when you actually got Ryan Grimm to, if you even want to call that a few sentences that he was able to string together, he said, well, I just go inside and report from in there what's happening. That's not journalism, that's stenography. So he essentially admitted that he's a stenographer, a state stenographer. And that's part of the problem too, is that you have high profile journalists like Ryan Grimm who pretend to be adversarial and whom people read and take seriously. And they're really behind in a big way constructing the narrative of what's going on here. And that's problematic as well.
Yes. And can we talk about, just because you brought it up, and I think that I tweeted about this earlier, and I think it's really important. I think it's something that a lot of people are missing, but I noticed it when Fiorella mentioned Julian Assange at the March for Medicare for All. And then when Max brought up Medicare for All at the healthcare moratorium or at the eviction moratorium. And then Franco, you experiences it as well. People, we're not here to talk about that. And what I think a lot of people are not grasping is how connected all of these issues are. And nobody's thinking bigger picture. And the politicians are using that as a method of controlling the environment and what they're going to be forced to talk about, because it's much easier to just do like a single issue. I have my key talking points. I don't have to think beyond those. But all of this stuff is intertwined, and we need to start connecting those dots and making it clear that, the eviction moratorium is directly connected to the fact that we don't have Medicare for All, which is directly connected to military spending, which is directly connected to the fight for free speech and Julian Assange. Like, all of these things go together. And a lot of people are unable to grasp that. I think it's, people are very singularly focused, and a lot of people are missing the big picture. Do you guys think that that's an accurate assessment? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we're facing right now.
They don't, their mind currently isn't wired to connect these dots. They view these things as isolated cases. So all these other dots that should be connected just goes over their heads until someone points it out to them. And then there's a little bit within them, like even subconsciously, if somebody mentions it, they're going to think about it a little more. So that's why it's important for people to be brave enough and to call that out, to get these people to think. Because I saw it in a lot of their faces. Like when I was calling them out, they were in disbelief. And they had to really think about what to say. And there
was the one person on the steps that you said, I think you said, did you notice she didn't have an answer when I asked her what
you could
happened?
See it in her face, right?
Yeah, you could. You 100%. She was like, wait, yeah, why doesn't she have an answer for that? Like, this is not a new problem, y'all. This eviction moratorium has been going on for a long ass time. This has been like, the homelessness crisis is not a new thing. These are elected officials. And unless you want to, because this happens a lot, people infantilize them and be like, oh, well, they're just too dumb. They're new. You got to give them time. They don't know what they're doing. That's bullshit. They know exactly what they're doing. They knew about the homelessness crisis, AOC, and they want to play it both ways too. Like Cori Bush said, well, we've been working behind the scenes really hard. And then AOC says they were caught off guard. I'm
Our
like, which one is
superheroes
it?
At work, we just don't see it.
But
which is it?
There's comic book stories written about it, but it's just not publicized in the mainstream news because it's happening behind the scenes.
Right. But it's, but people just accept that. They just accept that
and then they come to try to self-reassure themselves with that reality that they're comfortable with, which is just an illusion. Because like you saw like another girl who was like sitting like a little bit more behind, but it's the same girl that like went after Max Blumenthal. She like was sitting there for a while, and then she's like, I think what they're doing is admirable, like just coming up with things to try to stay in that reality that they're comfortable with. But over time, they're gonna, if they keep hearing this stuff, they're gonna have it in their subconscious, and they're either gonna be more aggressive about being self-assured, and we see that with a lot of the shit libs like TYT, it just becomes so ridiculous. Or they'll be smart enough and see the logic.
And
I think
some of them
recognize
will
all the fallacies.
Yeah, that's all true. And a lot of what plays into that is class and the comfort that comes with being part of an elevated class or even the middle class, because you can afford, in a sense, to rest on your laurels and keep believing in these fantasies. And maybe it'll reach a critical mass where these people see that nothing substantive is getting done, and they'll finally wake up, for lack of a better term. But if it hasn't happened by now, I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know how much more of this theater there can be before, people just drop the personalities and get to what's real.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are just incredibly comfortable with incrementalism. They feel like, oh, this tiny little win. We got a tiny little win. Like they see that as a good thing.
It's not a win. It's
and
a
that's not
ceasefire.
Yes, it's not, it's being spun that way as this is a win, that Cory Bush got like a win and like, oh, we should all be so grateful. It's not, this isn't a win. It's, it's like worse than the eviction moratorium that we had before. It's been like means tested. And it's like the $1,400 checks. We're going to give you $2,000 and then you only get 1,400 and everybody's like, oh, okay, that's good. No, that's not a win. You just got screwed and we just got screwed again. They're just kicking the can down the road. That's all this is. And there's numerous ways for them to wiggle themselves out of this. The court already said that Biden couldn't do this. Why couldn't they just say, nope, we're striking it down, not going to happen? Or, it's based on these very vague terms where it's on COVID, like your COVID numbers. What happens if your COVID numbers go down? Are you going to lose that money? And none of these questions are being asked. None of them are being answered. And people are getting pissed off if you have these questions. And it shouldn't be spun. I mean, I know that they're going to spin it as a win, but this, like, no serious person should see this as a win. It's almost offensive what is being offered to us. I mean, we're like over a year and a half into this pandemic, and they haven't done anything for you, y'all. They haven't done anything for you. They lied about the $1,400, like the $2,000. It became $1,400. We can't get any help, and then this is the only thing that progressives fight for, and it's the only thing that they get. This isn't a win. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an analogy here. It's like you try to fix something, right? Let's say you fix, I don't know, like you fix a car, but then you miss a spot, like there's like a leak. And then you're like, oh, it's all fixed. And then like the person who owns the car, like, wait, there's still a leak right there. It's like, no, there isn't. Like, we'll worry about that later.
Yeah.
And just go ahead and drive it. We'll fix it later. And then they're kicking the can down the road. And then like you get a flat tire in the highway and you could get into an accident.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
like
like
what it is.
Your car keeps overheating, and instead of dealing with that, somebody tells you, well, just carry a gallon of water with you and pour it in there when it starts to overheat.
And then like there's people that get mad at you for getting mad at the person who did a horrible job fixing your car. Instead of getting mad at the person who was supposed to fix your car 100%.
Let's talk about Anders Lee. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Because you tried to have a conversation of substance with him, and it didn't seem like he knew what he was talking about. And it also seemed like the argument he was trying to make was that what you're doing, the reporting you've been doing and trying to hold these politicians to account is pointless because they're never going to yield to anything. And therefore, the only logical conclusion one can draw from that argument is that we should do nothing, because he didn't provide any alternative. He kept asking you, what have you, like we talked about earlier, what have you done about housing? What have you done about Medicare for all?
Am I a congressperson?
Right.
Oh.
Right. So it seems like there are the people on the one side who are in the cult of personality, and then there are people on the other side like Anders Lee, who I don't know if he's a nihilist or he's just given up. But did you run into a lot of people like him as well?
It was all those people, a lot of those people on the steps. A lot of them were kind of afraid to say stuff. Or there were other people I just couldn't really hear, but I could see them like shouting at me. he was the one that was yelling at me the most. Like you could see it in the footage, like he was like in my face yelling at me, and like in person I could feel like his spit hitting my face. That's how close he was.
Yeah, his mask kept falling off.
Yeah. And then he was like, stop filming me. But the thing is, like, all right, like I'm right now, like the moment is heated. Like, what if you like do something physically to me or something? Like I want to have like that footage. I want to be protecting myself, right? At the very least, it prevents something like that from happening. But I did try to calm him down. I was like, all right, let's have this conversation over there, all right, civilly. And I'll point the camera in another direction. And he still, like, it started out calm, and then he'd like increase like how like his aggression. And like even the police like had to step in and be like, all right, step away from it. Like told him like back off. And then as he was like walking away, he was still yelling at me. And then the cops were like, he's backed away. Why are you still yelling at him? Like to Andrews Lee.
Yeah.
And then like I was trying to make a point, like, look, our parent, like I didn't mean just like his parents, but I was like our parents have been voting for these imperialists, right, for decades. And now it's because they had trust in them. They're like, oh, like, you know, harm reduction, like they're not perfect, but they're doing the best that they can. And now people are being indoctrinated into believing that with the squad, like, oh, they're not perfect, but they're trying. And so this is the new generation of like the Pelosi's and the Bidens and the Obamas. That's the point I was kind of trying to make. But he's like, oh, don't talk about my parents like that. My parents voted for Bernie.
Oh my God.
And then I was,
and Bernie's an imperialist.
That's what I said. I was like, Bernie Sanders is a social imperialist.
Yes. I mean, I'm so tired. Like, that's what bothers me. I
mean, I was buying into it. I was buying into the Bernie stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I bought in, I don't know. I guess it depends on your definition.
I had hope.
But I supported him, and I was hopeful that maybe, I always tell my husband, like, I think that this is our one chance to like shift things back in the other direction so we don't go off the cliff. Like, I don't have any like grand hopes that he's going to like do anything that he like claimed he was going to, but I thought maybe we can just push it back the other way enough that we're not going to fall off the cliff. But yeah, like these people, I think a lot of it is just, and Jesse and I have talked about this numerous times with numerous people, but I think it's coming to terms with the fact that everything that you thought you knew is a lie is a lot. That's a lot for people. And I think that a lot of people are struggling with realizing that, you know, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are the same. There is no difference. Like you've been convinced your whole life that, you know, there's a good team and a bad team, and your team's the good team and the other team's the bad team. And I think it's really hard for people to recognize it. And I think it's also difficult for people to admit that they've been duped, you know,
so like Mitch McConnell's too old and frail to sleep on the Capitol steps. That's about the only difference.
Yeah. Same with Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all owned and operated by the exact same people. You know, there are differences, like big tech's more of a Democrat thing, and then big oil's more of like a Republican thing. But it's basically, they're all owned and operated by the same people. They all have the same end goals. They all go to the same dinner parties. They vacation together. Their kids go to the same schools. They don't work for us. Like they're out of touch. They have no idea what's happening. But I think that it's really difficult for people to recognize and like come to terms with the fact that we're on our own, really, that there is no politician that's fighting for you. Like I think people are desperate for a quote unquote hero, somebody to come and save us. And I think that's hard for people. They really are desperate for somebody, anything to believe in, because we've all been beaten down so much. So yeah, I don't know,
but that shouldn't preclude a rational assessment of where we are, and the inarguable fact that these people have done nothing to make anybody's lives better. They've been 99% performance the whole time, and they've had more than enough time to get it together and actually do something. And a tepid statement once in a while from Ilhan Omar, for example, about in solidarity with Palestinians, at the same time as she's dismissing their right to resist, at the same time as she's parroting the worn out line of Hamas being a terrorist group and not a legitimate resistance group, the only resistance group that Palestinians have, the only armed resistance group. That's not good enough.
And Ilhan Omar voted to increase the budget for Israel.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is where the focus should be, and that's what speaks volumes. That's what they're really doing. But all this fanfare about these performances they put on, that's what gets the attention. And part of that has to do with the press as well, because that's entertainment, that's infotainment, that's what sells papers. And I have the New York Times up right here. The first two headlines: in string of wins, quote, Biden Democrats, unquote, see a reality check for the left. And then just briefly, the summary: progressives are holding their own with moderates in fights over policy, but off-year elections suggest they need a new strategy for critiquing President Biden without seeming disloyal. And then right underneath that, with Capitol sit-in, Cori Bush galvanized a progressive revolt over evictions. Refusing to move from the Capitol steps, the first-term Congresswoman from St. Louis, and that's not why I'm wearing this hat, by the way, intensified pressure on the Biden administration and showed her tactics could yield results. What
refusing
results?
to move, she moved.
What
she hung out in her car. She went and
But
took a
what
shower.
That's not what's being covered. A lot of
I
these
know.
quote unquote progressive channels aren't even, they're buying into it. They think that she did sleep throughout the whole night on the steps, and she didn't. She was able to sit in her car with AC. There were some nights where some of them went home. And like one of the things that Anders Lee was trying to call me out on is like, they didn't vote for the increase in the budget, dumbass. Like, he was telling me that, and I'm like, I couldn't be more, I wasn't able to be more specific. But when I was talking about I was talking about the squad, like these people that were supposed to not be making friends with these imperialist warmongers, but then they're calling them mama bear, they're rubbing shoulders with them, taking pictures with people like Adam Schiff, and Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Pramila Jayapal, and Ayanna Pressley, and Ro Khanna all voted for an increase in the budget. I mean,
yes.
If they're aren't they supposed to be like in unit against imperialism?
Well, they were supposed to be a unit against, I feel like everybody's forgotten this, but in 2018, when they were running, the whole point was that they were going to challenge the Democratic establishment.
Mm-hmm.
That was the point of them. This was coming off of the heels of Bernie Sanders getting screwed in 2016. And he, galvanized these people to get involved. And because they got screwed by the Democratic Party, they were going to go and challenge the corruption within their own party. They talked about it all the time. There's the whole video where AOC was like, we're going to bring the ruckus to the Democratic
Doesn't matter
Party.
if you're a one-term congressperson.
Yeah.
Right.
And she said these are her words. Like, people get mad at me and I'm like, fam, all I'm asking her to do is what she said she would do. Like, I'm not making this shit up. She claimed she was going to do these things, and she's done the complete opposite. She hasn't challenged Nancy Pelosi on any fucking thing. She did the one time with the Sunrise Movement, which I still think looks like a setup. And that was her one like brave, courageous act. The rest of the time, all you get from her is snarky tweets, dramatic speeches, and acquiescence to the Democratic Party. That's all she does. She votes along with the Democratic establishment. She never makes any waves. She never calls them out by name. She's not fighting for anything, really. I mean, force the vote, I don't know. And I get like people have this weird emotional thing with force the vote, where I don't know if it's because Jimmy Dore was involved or whatever, but like they think it's this like most toxic idea that ever existed. And it's politics 101. And there was never a better time in the history of everdom for people to force the vote on Medicare for all in the middle of a fucking pandemic. They had the ability to do it. They had the leverage to do it. And the fact that they wouldn't do it should be incredibly telling to people. But they're willing to excuse that too.
It's about principles, right?
Representative. Go ahead, Franco.
And it wasn't just about, I don't think it should have just been about healthcare. It should have been about a lot of issues. Like, why would you cast your vote for somebody who was complicit in war crimes and in the U.S. torture program during the Bush administration?
Yes.
Right, Nancy Pelosi. Why didn't you just withhold your vote so that we can get out of all these wars? Why didn't you withhold your vote so that you can have rent forgiveness for everybody? Why didn't you withhold your vote to end homelessness? There's all these issues could have been brought together, and it would have made headlines if they all came as a unit. It's like, oh no, they keep refusing to vote for a speaker until they get all these progressive things.
Yes.
but
You shouldn't have
they
even
won't
been
do it,
considering. She's
and why
Nancy
is that?
Pelosi. She's Nancy
Yeah.
Pelosi. Like we force the vote shouldn't have even been a conversation that we were able to have, because progressives shouldn't have even been thinking about voting for Nancy Pelosi. It should have already been, like, AOC herself said, I won't vote for Nancy Pelosi. And then she did twice. You know, that shouldn't have even been a conversation. And I've said it before, if you want me to vote for Nancy fucking Pelosi, I need a laundry list of stuff, and I need it done in advance. Like today, you do this shit today, and then I'll vote for you. Not I'll vote for you and then maybe you'll help me out. Nope, I need this shit in advance. And you know, then I'm going to continue to fight and like push back on everything that you do. They should be flipping tables, like, you know, breathing fire. People are suffering. Like, I just don't think that there's any urgency whatsoever. Like those kids on the steps are all like, yeah, it's fine. Like they're working.
They've never been
it.
to a real protest before.
No.
Like they think that that's a real protest, but it was just a bunch of other college students there, and Capitol Hill staffers. If they kept withholding their vote, it was just going to keep going into the House, and they should just keep doing it over and over and over again. And if you can't ever get any progressive legislation passed, then the very least you can just expose how corrupt our government is, how they're bought off by corporations. Like at the very least, do everything you can to expose how corrupt the system is, and how we're not going to solve our problems if we keep having these politicians that are bought off by corporations, and that we need to do more than just voting for people, because they're not going to serve us. They're going to serve corporations. Like we need direct action, and we need to do even more than that. Like we need to find solutions in which we're not empowering these corporations anymore, like opting out of the system.
Right.
Yeah, we can't organize. We can't play their game.
Franco, how much of the squad and their colleagues' refusal or inability to do anything meaningful, at least at this point, at least in the context of what we're talking about, how much do you think that has to do with the upcoming midterm elections and their just wanting to hold on to power, especially with the balance in Congress being so fragile for especially for the Democrats, even though there's almost parity there with the Republicans?
After you win and after you become, famous, it's easier for you to win re-election. So they're not just looking for only like these progressives and grassroots people. They're going to be campaigning for the more brainwashed liberals to vote for them. They're finding a new fan base. So they're just going to keep shifting to become more and more moderates.
Well, and we see that in independent media too. I think that this is one of the biggest problems, is that in order to attract the widest base of people, you have to become as centrist as possible. I think that we see that in independent media. We see people we have channels that have told us straight up they won't cover Julian Assange because it affects their clicks and their subscriptions and their Patreons and all that stuff. And I think that that's a huge part of the problem, is that in this system, it rewards mediocrity, we reward the most milquetoast of people.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. I don't know, but I also think that
it happens at a subconscious level too, because they get rewarded with that. Like they see the numbers, they see more money coming in. And so they're like, all right, I'm just going to keep doing more of this without thinking. And that's because we live in a society where a lot of people aren't self-aware enough.
And there's a lot of similarity with policing in that the system is inherently corrupt, and you can enter it, whether it's federal government, local government, you can enter the police force with the best of intentions, but you are going to get corrupted in some way. It's too big for you. You will be subsumed and consumed by it, and you'll either play along with it or you'll give it up, realizing
or they'll push you out.
Right, or you'll get pushed out. And we're seeing the squad, AOC especially, Cori Bush, Nina Turner, all of these people, they want in, they want the power, they want access to power that's above them, and they want these people live in the lap of luxury. They want that lifestyle that comes along with it. It has nothing to do anymore with constituents'
becomes
needs.
attractive to them.
It's like what was happening in France before the French Revolution, when you had the elites retreating into the palace at Versailles, completely detached from ordinary people. And that's what we're seeing now. It's all theater. It's all subservience to power and luxury. And I don't know that, again, if we can do anything to affect change, but I think, and tell me if I'm getting this wrong, Franco, where you're coming from is that we need to try at least to get in their faces and affect change before we don't give up, but we move on to other tactics. Is that where you're coming from?
We have to wake as many people up as we can. And so at that event, it was a great opportunity for some people to hear a perspective that they probably haven't ever heard before, because they're stuck in a bubble. And then that's the thing, like these people, like whether it's politicians or whether it's these college students or these staffers, they're in a bubble and they're absorbing the energy of their peers. And they also become more sympathetic to the way that their peers think. They're like, oh, I understand why they're this way. Oh, that way's not that bad. Yes, they're doing this because it's that. And then it becomes they romanticize over that, and they want to be accepted by their peers. And that's why I was saying, like, it's like at a subconscious level, they start changing to be more like their peers so they can be accepted. And that's just the way that humans are designed. Like, we're social creatures that way. Like, we're lucky to not have been, born in like a privileged family like that like has brainwashed us so effectively, and to only interact with other privileged people and to be only absorbing their energy. We've interacted with enough working class people to understand where those working class people are coming from and how they've been ostracized and oppressed and suffered all these years because of these ruling elites, right? And their minions that are in Congress. And
do you think it's like a lack of empathy? Like, people are just, they're unable to, because like I don't come from privilege in any way, but like even just from that, like I can still recognize, like I'm able to empathize with other people who like, I guess I do come from some privilege because I'm a white chick in, middle class family, but you know what I mean though? Like, I'm able to like think about and empathize with people. Like, I'm not homeless, but I can empathize with the homeless. And like, I just wonder if like what level of this is just a lack of them being able to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, because it seems like these people are just completely incapable. There's no urgency whatsoever for this stuff. I mean, what do they say? Like 68,000 people a year die from lack of healthcare. That's absurd. People should be furious about that. There should be a sense of urgency about fixing that problem. And the fact that, people are about to get evicted. Why is there no sense of urgency from these people? And it's really frustrating to watch, people who should know better and be able to process this information, thinking that incrementalism is an acceptable method of
they
dealing
put themselves too much in their peers' shoes, like more than in the other people's shoes. It's the same thing with a lot of people who watch like their favorite independent media content creators, or quote unquote independent, and the community and like in the live chats, like they start to put themselves too much in their shoes and be like, oh, it's great like to be a part of that, and to be rewarded like how those people are rewarded. Look at how much fun, like they see this, so like look how much fun like the TYT crowd has with each other, or like when it comes to politicians, like look how much fun these people have at their wine parties and how they're getting paid and how they can sit comfortably, while in their head they make excuses for themselves. Well, I can add as much incremental or small changes as I can. I can help some people here and there while I do this, while I pleasure myself a bit. They make excuses for themselves. Like, we all have a little like lawyer in our head that tries to make ourselves think
justify.
That, to make ourselves feel justified.
Yeah. And we convince ourselves, and everybody's guilty of it. I think a lot of times we convince ourselves that we're doing things the best way we know how, even though it's really just we're doing things the easiest way, because easy is easy. And humans are, we're kind of
The
wired
path of
to
least resistance.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. But also, I wanted to ask you too, because this is a huge part of it. You know, people were mad at you and Max Blumenthal, and we're mad at Kobe at the March for Medicare for All simply for asking questions. And I think that that's really terrifying because like these politicians shouldn't be able to leave the house without being asked tough questions all the time. And especially right now, the level of suffering is so extreme. And we've been in this COVID bullshit for a year and a half, and there's this mass homelessness crisis, and there's this mass eviction crisis that's looming. We still don't have health care. Like there's all of this stuff going on. And people are still getting mad that we're just asking questions. What do you think of that? Like because like that's what journalism is supposed to be. It's supposed to be asking questions of people in power. And it seems like nobody cares that these people never have to answer for anything ever. And then they're shielded.
Mm-hmm. If they don't want to answer a question, then I'm going to have to ask myself, what are they trying to hide? It should be, if they're going to be real with me, and if you're a politician, like if you're supposed to be representing us, you really have to be real with the people you're representing so that they can have trust in you. But if you're avoiding questions, whether it be like just like flailing your arm or saying, we'll talk about it later, or having somebody intercept and like protect you, or saying, or asking, what will you ask me in the interview before they start rolling the camera, then it seems like you're trying to hide something and it looks super sus. So we just have to let people, we have to tell people, like these fans of these politicians, know that it's like, what if they're not gonna answer our question, then it's because they're probably trying to hide something from us. Otherwise you're the one that's making excuses for them for why they can't answer it, and you're making all these assumptions just so that you can be comfortable about your belief in them, your interpretation of those politicians.
Yeah, it's that their fans don't want them to be tainted in any way. And again, it goes back to the cult of personality, and that enables these politicians to set the parameters of political discourse and political action. So once they have you, once the squad has you hook, line, and sinker and says, well, we're adopting incrementalism now, then their fan base, because let's be honest, that's what it is, says, well, we need to protect the squad. We need to go along with,
we need to help them.
Right. We need to help them.
Said.
So we're fine with incrementalism when it just does not make any sense to me. And maybe I'm just crazy, but it does not make any sense to me that people don't support Medicare for all. Like, why would you not, other than you have this fandom overwhelming your rationality, telling you that incrementalism is the way to go, or expanding Medicare for all, or expanding private insurance options, which is probably the worst of the worst. What do you think about that?
They never have an answer for when incrementalism has ever worked.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if you guys saw like the debate I had with this one college kid who was trying to sleep, and then he's like, all right, if I answer this question, will you please let me sleep? Like dude, you chose to be in that public space. These homeless people are in public spaces too, and they don't get like, they can't control the noises around them for when they're trying to sleep. But whatever, like we started debating, and he was arguing for why incrementalism is the way, and that people who support things like forced to vote don't understand how Congress works. And I was trying to find places where we could agree, so that I can point out some hypocrisy in his argument. And like I was like, well, you're out here, right? So you agree that we should be having these direct actions. And I sensed a bit of no, I'm not gonna say like I sensed a bit of it. It was a Freudian slip when I was like, what do you want to let the people know about how we need to have more direct action, right? Because I'm broadcasting this so that this can inspire more people. to take action. And he was like, please get out and call your congresspeople, call your local politicians, because, you know, I'm tired and I just want to go home and I want to lay in my bed. So he made it about himself at that moment instead of talking about the people who are homeless. So these people try to act like they're like sympathetic for people and all that, but you know, when shit gets real and they're actually like in the position that these homeless people are at, like where they're sleeping outside, then they just start thinking selfishly and like, you know what, I want to go back to my life of comfort.
Well, I'm just going to come back to the fact that AOC herself said when she was running in 2018, we don't have to wait to do these things. She did a ton of ads where she's like, we don't have to wait for Medicare for all. We don't have to wait for this. We don't have to wait for that. We can do it right now. It just takes political will. That's almost verbatim because I can hear her voice in my head as I say it. You know, we just need the political will. We can do it right now. And then the second they reach some level of power and they actually have a position of leverage that they can use, albeit small, and albeit, yes, they are going up against a very established and corrupt system. And nobody said it was going to be easy. But the fact that they capitulate immediately and don't make any effort whatsoever to fight for this stuff is unacceptable. And there are just way too many people who are willing to accept that. And to me, it just comes down to there's needless suffering happening. These people claim to be fighting for us and they're not. Like I mean, how many times do they get to lie to you? How many times do they get to claim to be on your team and then stab you in the back? I mean, it's over and over and over again. They voted for the CARES Act. And I mean, it's just, they voted for Nancy Pelosi. The fact that they did that is just really troubling. You can see the shift. It's an obvious shift. You know, before they were running, when they needed your vote, they told you all of the wonderful progressive things that you wanted to hear. And the minute they got into office, it was like within 24 hours, AOC started shifting things on her website and like taking foreign policy down, and like the stuff about Palestine and all of that stuff started to disappear from her website. And it was an immediate shift. And if you go back and you look at the rhetoric that they used in 2018 and the rhetoric that they're using now, it's an obvious shift. And that's what Jesse was talking about earlier. DC changes you. The system changes you, period.
And that has to be pointed out to these people that are still brainwashed, or still in this matrix. If you're still, you know, if you think you're a progressive, but you're still hero worshiping politicians, you're still in the matrix. If you're still watching in the independent channels that protect these politicians, you're still in the matrix. So wait, what were you saying a little bit before that? I was going to make a point about something you said about.
I don't know. I don't know how far back. I was just saying that, you know, like you have to be able to put, what was I even saying?
These politicians are not really there to help. Oh, okay. This is what should have immediately discredited AOC as someone who's fighting for you. Supposedly she was supposed to not be friends with any of these corporate politicians, right? And that, like, that's what Kyle Kalinske said about the Justice Democrats, right? They're not there to be friends with anybody in DC. But then she tried to funnel money to these right-wing politicians, blood, sweat, and tears that people work their asses off, like to get you elected. And then she funnels that to the people CIA, she's supposed to be Democrats. Fighting against.
Yeah.
Yes.
CIA.
That like should immediately discredit her as someone who's progressive.
100%, Franco. 100%. That makes me furious. I don't know how anybody who donated to her isn't just like flipping I would be asking for a refund if I had donated to her, because she's taking money from people who are like believe in the progressive bullshit, and then she's giving it to corporate and CIA controlled Democrats. And that is offensive beyond measure. Like, she doesn't have the right to do that, to take your money and give it to people who are openly and actively working against you. That's not okay.
There were early signals of this after she came into office. And I'm thinking of the hubbub over Amazon opening a headquarters in New York. And she was presented as the champion of the anti-Amazon movement, if you will. And after Amazon withdrew setting up shop in New York, it wasn't that long after, I think this was a Bloomberg Bloomberg piece or maybe Business Insider, she sort of not completely flipped, but she said she's willing to work with Amazon and possibly woo them back to New York as long as certain stipulations are met. And they were very milquetoast stipulations that wouldn't have done anything to improve workers' lives and wouldn't have done anything to even come close to staunching the gentrification and displacement that would happen with Amazon setting up shop there. So even then, you know, and that was after she had already waffled or basically just collapsed with regard to solidarity for Palestinians. It was always there from the beginning, and I don't think her colleagues are any different. And people still laud Ilhan Omar for standing up to Elliot Abrams. I didn't see that at all.
So
I didn't see that at all, and I feel like she had no idea until maybe 15 minutes before that went down, what the El Mozote massacre was. She didn't even know how to like get through what was written for her to say. And, you know, again, I mentioned her mealy mouth tweets with regard to Palestine. And, you know, point being, there were early signs of this, I think, that we all saw coming. And anytime we push back against the squad with these points, we were told, like we said, oh, give them a chance. We got to work with them.
I gave them chances.
Right. And Ali Abu Nima is really good about saying this. Like, if and when they do something good, it should be credit where credit's due. But it's rare, if ever, that they do that. And if and when they do, we still shouldn't take yes for an answer, because it's never enough. We should keep pushing them and keep pushing them. But as I said, at this point, I don't know how much more we can push them, because they are, you know, as we've been saying, in this elite bubble that's impenetrable. It's like, you know, it's like the Tokyo bubble.
Well, I think that's why what Franco did is so important, because I don't think it's about pushing them anymore. I think it's about waking people up to the fact that they can't be pushed, and waking people up to the fact that our system, even if they could be pushed, our system is so thoroughly corrupted that we're not going to be able to make changes within the electoral system on any significant or substantive level. It's just not going to happen, not in the amount of time that it needs to happen. We are going to have mass public movements to get the things that we deserve. Like, this is stuff that we should already have. It's a fucking joke that we don't have healthcare in the United States in the year 2021. That's fucking crazy. It's crazy that 11 million people in the middle of a pandemic are facing eviction in the United States of America. That's fucking crazy. And while that's happening, our government can't stop shoveling money at the 1%, like shoveling money, like bulldozers full of money to the richest people among us. But people can't go to the doctor. And that's the stuff that your like progressive heroes are voting for. They supported the CARES Act, the greatest transfer of wealth to the 1% in history. They voted for that shit. Like, but you know, people don't want to hold. It's this weird thing where they just, again, I think it's what Franco says, that it's just like this level of comfort. They don't like the idea of their heroes being challenged. And I think a lot of that is just ego. They're like, they don't like to admit that they were duped, which I get. Like, I voted for Barack Obama in 2008. I got duped. I feel dumb as fuck, and I hate myself for that vote. But I'm willing to admit that. Like, I'm willing to say, you know, I bought onto his bullshit. I mean, to some degree, I've never been an electoral politics person. I've never thought that like electing somebody was ever going to do any like change or good or anything. But when he was, and it may be, I like to give myself this excuse. In 2008, I had just had my first child. So I was like emotional, and here's this guy, he's going to be the first Black president. I felt like the hope and change. Like, I bought into that. Like, we can do this. Like, we can really change our country. It was bullshit, but it's okay to admit that you were wrong. And I try to make that connection with Trump people. Like, I got Obama'd. If you voted for Trump, you got Trumped. Like, you got Obama'd. He told you he was one thing and he was the complete opposite. And it's okay. Like, you can admit that you got it wrong and that you voted. It's not like it doesn't discredit you, or, you know, you just made a mistake and got on the wrong bus, you know.
That's a good segue into something I wanted to ask Franco about, is Trump and the the lingering effects of, or the pathology that's still there, the anti-Trump pathology that's still there. It's like something that Democrats cannot let go of. The guy isn't even in office anymore. He's been banned from Twitter. And I think there's a trauma that's still there that makes people cling to personalities like the Squad, because they see that as their only bulwark, their only defense against somebody like Trump. And, we see it too with these hearings or inquiries going on into what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. And I'm wondering if you agree with that, or if you think that pathology, that pathological obsession with anybody but Trump plays into this.
I think we were so annoyed by that, like during the Trump presidency, like a lot of these liberals and neo-progressives and synthetic leftists were blaming Trump for everything, even though the Democrats were complicit in it, they were enabling it, or they were in some cases more to blame. The silver lining now that Trump isn't in office is that they have no one else to blame now that the Democrats have the majority of the House and the Senate, and they have the White House. So they can't hide behind, oh, we can't do it because of Trump, or we can't do it because like there's too many Republicans in the House of the Senate that aren't letting this happen. And so we got to keep pointing that out to people when we can't get something that's like fully in our favor that should be benefiting us taking place. Like what they're going to say, oh no, like there are some Republicans that were voting it. No, you can't use that as an excuse anymore. The majority, all these Democrats should have been voting for it. And if they're not, then they should be, they should lose their jobs.
Yeah.
But also stop relying on electoral politics.
Yes. No, for sure. But like the excuse of, and this is what always happens. Democrats get into office and they pretend that they can't get anything done for the people. And meanwhile, they push through stuff that Republicans could only dream of getting passed. And this happens every time. I mean, the stuff that Bill Clinton got away with like the Telecommunications Act, all of that stuff, that's stuff that Republicans couldn't get done.
Bill,
like the crime bill and the
Obama
did the Bush tax cuts. Like this is all stuff that it's like a wet dream. But it takes Democrats who have this veneer of being for the people that makes that easier to swallow. There's a meme about Barack Obama where they're, I don't care what you think about Barack Obama, but boy, that charisma sure did make all the, and then it laundry lists like his just bullshit war crimes and all of that stuff. And that's what it is though. It's like, because the one team is seen as for the people and humanitarian and all of that stuff, it makes all of the things, the horrible things that they pass, so much easier to swallow and to accept. And well, a Democrat did it, so it must be the right thing to do. And it's kind of like the same thing. It's like American exceptionalism, only teams inside. Like Republicans do the same thing. Well, anything that Trump did must be good because he's on my team. And they were unwilling to look at the fact that he, broke all of his promises to you and all. It's like that same. Again, I think it's a lot of ego. People just don't want to admit that they got duped.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, and the politicians obviously don't want to admit that they're effing us over. They just want to pretend like we don't exist, like their critics don't exist. Mm-hmm. Like, let's start the music, like just trying to drown me out. Because if I had kept going without them doing that, without them like trying to distract from what I'm saying, like they knew I was gonna say some more shit that was gonna expose them.
Yes.
Like
cool?
all these events happening, like March for Medicare for All, all this whole thing with forced to vote, all this imperialism happening, like all that would have been exposing them even more. So they didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. Instead, they turned away, and they knew that their fans and their minions were going to be standing up for them.
Yeah. And if they were legit though, if they, as soon as you started asking questions, AOC would have been like, okay, come on, let's talk about what are your concerns? Like, okay, you want to know what happens next? Here's what we've been talking about. These are the plans that we need your help. We're going to organize this event. We're going to do, and then, you could have asked questions about, the March for Medicare for All. And if they were legit, first of all, we wouldn't even have to ask because they would have showed up. But
or better yet, they would have, if she was actually representing us, she would have been saying, what do you want us to do?
Right. Yeah. What are your ideas? What do you think that we can
Yeah.
do? How can we mobilize you? How can we assist you? Because I think Fee said it earlier on Combo Couch. I don't know if you were on when she said this or if it was before you came on, but movements are never led by the top. Like the stuff that gets stuff done, that's not, like this whole like the pajama party thing or whatever, that was never like a legitimate movement. And they didn't even let like actual homeless people speak or people who are facing eviction
Right, to talk
speak.
about their experiences.
It was all like the pre-approved speakers, the professionals, you know what I mean? And that's not a movement. The movement needs to be led by the people that it affects. You know,
people
like,
have this assumption that these politicians are like these masterminds that are so intelligent and can hash it out without having our input. Like we're like, leave it to them. They're the experts. They'll figure it out. But no, like they have to hear from us so that they can have an understanding of what the problems are, so that they can better tackle it and come up with an efficient solution. But I didn't see a single like just like you said, Misty, I didn't see a single homeless person speak. Like in the Black Lives Matter protests, there were people talking about their experiences. I didn't see none of that. That's not a real protest. What I was at.
No,
it was a whole PR move.
And it would be interesting to know what was done before this kabuki theater happened to make sure perhaps that, I hate saying real homeless people, but for lack of a better term, to make sure that real homeless people weren't anywhere near the vicinity of what was going on.
Morgan tweeted that they cleared a camp not far from the Capitol.
There you go.
Wow.
Because that would give the lie to everything, to the whole performance.
And, like there was a camp right there that morning the cops came and busted up and cleared out, like right before they're going to do this performance over on the Capitol steps. It's like, you can't write that shit. It's like a script. It's a cartoon. It's a fucking cartoon. Like they're Cory Bush
overly
over here.
coached. Like I know that Cory Bush was told to like fake cry. Or oh snap! You guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, my mic unplugged. Like these people receive course, like they have these coaches that tell them what to do to capture people's emotions. Like Cory Bush was crying, and then she's like these tears, like when she started with her speech, and then I mumbled like are fake. And then like you see it like with AOC's pictures, like going like this in front of the cages, and then like when she's talking, there Cory Bush and AOC are talking.
She was facing an empty parking lot.
Chuck Schumer, they're like.
Yeah, those pictures are funny. The ones with Joe Biden. This is a really
it's so fake. It's Schumer. So overacted.
Yeah. And fam, the fact that like Adam Schiff and Chuck Schumer are like welcome at this protest, that doesn't send up red flags for y'all. Really? Like that doesn't make you suspicious at all that these people, and like Cory Bush walks over to Adam Schiff and like shakes his
hugs him.
So grateful for this fucking cretin showing up at your event, who's done nothing for the people ever, who's like a King Russiagate. He's a schmuck. You should like that.
They know what they're doing. Yes. Like she sees them and then they're like, they understand each other. They know what's going on.
Yeah. They gave him his photo op. He got to come and get his photo op where it looks like he's fighting for the people. That'll help him in his reelection. That's all this was about. It's
so creepy.
It pisses me off. It is creepy, but it pisses me off too, because there are legitimately people who are going to be affected by this shit, and they're using it, and it's very cynical, and it's very disgusting, and it's incredibly corrupt. And the fact that they gaslight people about the fact that they're actually fighting for you when they're using the issues that are affecting your life daily as like some PR stunt move is just beyond disgusting to me. Oh, it makes me so angry.
And what makes it doubly unsettling is that there's not even a pretense to try to hide it in any way. It's all out in the open, done in people's faces now, almost in a fuck you way. Like, yeah, this is how it is, and this is how we're going to keep doing it. And you can try to ask me legitimate questions all you want, but like you said, Franco, we're going to cue the music and drown you out. And maybe it always has been upfront, but not in this way where it's just, there are no holds barred. Like you said, it's creepy. I would say beyond creepy. It's just so flagrant. And again, such a fuck you to anybody who's looking for substantive change, anybody who's put their trust into these people to really affect change. And I don't know how much more bald-faced it could be at this point.
What I'm really
If you
scared
don't
of,
see it, then that's a big problem for you, as we mentioned earlier.
what I'm really scared of, and I said this at the end of my stream, is what if they start if like, because this inspired some people, other people to speak out, right? Like my friend Colin spoke out, and then there are other people that went up to me and Colin were thanking us. What if there's other people that start calling out these politicians in addition to me and Max Blumenthal and Kobe, and then they use that as an excuse to prevent people from filming at these events where there's politicians. And then there's like, nope, only credentialed journalists can be filming this. The selected, if you're for CNN or the Washington Post or for Fox News, only that's allowed. Nobody, if you're not credentialed, you can't film anything. You can't interrupt. If you do, you'll be kicked out.
Yeah, and they've already signaled they've already signaled that they're willing to do that. I mean, if you think about the rhetoric that they use, like when Force the Vote was happening, AOC, I have like a certificate that somebody made me because I'm like, I'm certified, bitch. Like she wanted, like, are you a certified organizer? What the fuck is a certified organizer? Are you human? Do you care about an issue? Are you going to organize an event? Then you're an organizer. Like, I'm so tired of these gatekeepers. Like, you have to be like a professional activist. Fuck off. If you care about something and you're willing to fight for it. No, I know,
Right.
but like that's what they
I know that's
like what you're
do,
talking about. They want like these credentials, they want to gatekeep, they want to control everything about the movement. And we all have seen like the crackdowns that are happening on journalism any fucking way. And so it's not like a stretch of the imagination at all to think that what you're talking about might happen and that they might.
I'm sure you guys know more about this. Look at what happened with the Craig Murray case.
Yes.
Right, in UK. So what's happening there, and what did the UK Supreme Court rule?
Yeah. That's terrifying. And for people who don't know, like briefly, I'll just tell you that it's called jigsaw identification. And this is like the most vague and ridiculous. It's the first time that somebody's been charged, journalists been charged under contempt of court in 70 years in Scotland, 50 years in the UK. And basically it's for jigsaw identification, which means that as a journalist, you have to make sure that anything that you publish isn't able to be used with literally all of the other information on planet Earth to identify a source. So like you may write something that is like completely innocuous and is completely like impossible to like ascertain an individual's identification. But if somebody can use that along with like 6 other articles that somebody else has posted and like a TV segment to like figure out who the source is, you can go to jail for that. But it's very selectively enforced. Like Craig Murray is a blogger. There were people in mainstream press at the BBC and Sky News and all of those other places who did very much the same thing that Craig Murray did, but they didn't target them. They targeted Craig Murray. And it's because the mainstream media pushes the establishment narrative. But the fact that these escalations of the attacks on journalism are being ignored, and then we see stuff like this where now, like you're right, they may eventually say that people, if you're not certified, you can't film at these events where these politicians are at, and that should terrify everybody.
And they'll use the threat of violence as a reason, which is why I think we need to keep an eye on the January 6th hearings, because that could very easily be weaponized into
it already is being weaponized.
Yeah,
right.
They say that they were traumatized from that.
How about the trauma that the homeless face?
Yeah.
You're not doing shit about that. I don't care about your trauma. Like, people get mad when I say that, but I do not give a shit about AOC's trauma. I don't care. You are an elected official, and nothing that you have faced even comes close to comparing to the things that the average homeless person has to deal with on the daily. So, get a therapist, deal with your shit, and help the people. You're not doing shit for the people. You're causing trauma on a daily basis with your inaction. So I don't care, I just don't. I have no sympathy for people who are in positions of power, who are constantly dispelling, all kinds of trauma across the board. And it's not just with actions, like people be, oh, she didn't vote for anything. Okay, but inaction is just as violent. And when you have people out there suffering and you refuse to fight for them, then you're complicit in that shit. So
yeah, and there are templates for real action, Occupy Wall Street being one of them. That was very effective up until it was destroyed by the powers that be, by Bloomberg in particular. and his police goons, but it was certainly a model of how we can circumvent the corpse of electoral politics. And
we need to learn from that.
Right. And organize and influence and wake people up, as we've been talking about. That's just one model. There are lots of others. I think the DAPL protests, I would say they were even more than protests, but that's another model. And this is something Chris Hedges said once. I'm sure he said it many times, but he participated in both. And he said, even though these movements, if you will, these protests, even though they were eventually, I wouldn't say defeated, but they were shut down, for lack of a better term, they're still building blocks toward where we want to see politics, or just see like a movement for justice go, like a real movement for justice. And we can't be discouraged by the fact that they were squashed by authorities. We have to
learn from it and build on it.
Look at the fact that they happened. Exactly. And so, you know, if what Franco's doing and other journalists like Max, of course, if that turns out to not be enough, regardless, we should be following or taking from these templates and organizing outside of these astroturfed lines.
Yes, 100%. And I don't want to keep you too much longer, Franco. You've been very generous, and I know you've had a busy week. But yeah, I think that it's really important that more people do what Franco did. And I know that it took, I seriously, when you spoke, I was so proud of you. Because I know that takes courage. And I know that you knew that you were about to be faced with 100 people who didn't agree with you. And that takes a huge amount of courage, but that's what needs to happen. We can't be afraid to speak out. And even and what you did, Franco, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but what you did makes it so much easier for the next person to do it. And then for the next person to do it. And Julian Assange says, courage is contagious. And so that one act of you having the courage of speaking your truth and holding these people accountable is really going to snowball. So you really do. I hope that you're proud of yourself. I hope that, that people who recognize what you did and the courage that it took, I hope that you're seen, because I know that you probably feel very attacked right now because you're getting shit from all different TYT and Ryan Grimm and Jordan Cheriton and all of those people. So just know that it's always tough to be the first, and you were one of the first to have the courage to speak out and to say something. So kudos to you. Seriously, I'm not just saying that because you're my friend. I was incredibly proud watching you. You did a great job. And
next time it'll be a group of us.
Yeah.
Let's like I was saying in the beginning, I would love to organize with you guys again and meet up in DC. Because this extension is for 60 days. The deadline is October 3rd. And I mean, we got to be calling them out before they start their theatrics this time, because they're going to come up with new theatrics. But yeah, I do got to say, I guess subconsciously I was inspired also from what I saw on Twitter, what Max Blumenthal was doing. And I was like, he can't be the only one doing that there. There's other DC journalists and commentators or activists that should be doing this. And I was just like, I'm gonna speak my piece, and I know that there's at least some people here that will agree with me. And if there isn't, at least I'll get some people who don't agree with me to think. And if they're not going to think and they're going to be resistant, at least it's going to expose them as being just fans and people that we just shouldn't be trusting, right? In the case here for Anders Lee, I was disappointed with Medea Benjamin telling me that what I did was nasty, even though some of it also, that inspiration was probably what I got from her when she called out the Trump administration, was yelling at what they're doing in Yemen and Syria. You guys know that famous clip, right?
Yeah.
Where
she's Gumby and she's
we'll
being
just keep
dragged
evolving
out.
The movement isn't one person.
No. I think that's the video you're talking about. But I think that you speaking out will make the next person more creative. And I think that that's what we just need keep calling them out. And I think that it also sent a message to them, to AOC and to Cori Bush, like we see you. We fucking see you.
Yeah,
like
and
we're onto you.
What does politeness have to do with any of this?
Well, if you ask Jordan Cheriton, that's how you get anything done.
Yeah.
You got to be
Well,
polite.
Excuse
and
me,
nice.
excuse me,
Yeah.
AOC, what about
Yeah.
this?
He seems like somebody who never leaves his basement.
No, that's not, to be fair. Jordan does do really great on the ground work. I've been super disappointed that some of the turns that he's taken. He's trashed Convo Couch. He called for them to be censored, and that really sucks for me because I really liked Jordan. I still like his work. He does really great on the ground reporting. I'm not trying to take that away from him. There are not a lot of on the ground journalists right now, and I don't agree with all of it. I think that when he goes to Trump rallies and then just like mocks Trump supporters, I don't think that that's all that super helpful. It's not really journalism. It's just, like you're making fun of people. Feels like the first round of American Idol where it's just like everybody's terrible. But yeah,
But when he's in the studio, his commentary's trash.
Yeah. But I mean,
everything you said,
Yeah.
on the ground, we need more of that.
Yeah, we definitely need more of that. And I don't want to take that away from him. And again, it was really super disappointing for me to watch his kind of slide into incrementalism and all of that stuff. It's been, that sucks. I'll still share his work because he still does great work. And we still follow each other. We got into it the other day over this very thing where he just says, I'm just too mean. I'm not too mean. More people need to be meaner. Like it's not a game. Like when has niceness ever gotten anybody anything? You can't coddle politicians into doing what you want. You have to pressure them, period. End of story. I mean, that's just historically accurate. Pressure is the only thing that gets things done.
Imagine telling slaves to be nice to their slave owners.
Right? Like be nice to your oppressors and maybe they'll, give you an extra cookie at dinner. No, that's not how this works, dude. They need pressure. AOC said it herself, right? We need confrontation. She said it herself. Well, that's what we're doing. We're confronting them. So yeah, you get what you asked for, I guess, AOC. So do you want to tell everybody what you have coming up on Frank Analysis? I know that you have a special guest coming on next week, which I'm pretty excited about to watch.
I'm gonna have Elizabeth Voss on the 16th next week. Was that who you were talking about?
No, I was talking about Ryan Grimm. Is he coming on?
Yeah. I forgot.
Yeah.
I'm having Ryan Grimm on next week.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be challenging him on things.
Kudos to him for agreeing to come on.
Yeah, that I will give him props for that. At least he's brave enough to go on these shows that don't agree with him, as opposed to some of these other people that just block me.
Yeah.
When I call them out, like he's willing to come on, but I know that it's because he wants to, try to clear his name, which I will be careful of that. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at B43Franco and on YouTube and Rokfin and Odyssey. My channel name is Frank Analysis. That's FRANC space analysis. And Misty and Jesse, thank you guys so much, man. I love you guys. I had a lot of fun.
Likewise. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Good to
thanks
see you
for doing
again.
what you did. It was good to see you. You're always welcome back. And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll catch you next time.